So hello, everybody who has joined us so far. Welcome. We're excited to be providing this Reaching the Next Generation STEM 101 webinar today as part of our effort from our pre-K-12 STEM Outreach Committee. So my name is Stephanie Ivy. I'm co-chair of the committee and will be one of the presenters today. And I'm going to ask my partners in crime here. We'll start with Ana Maria if she'll introduce herself.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Ana Maria Torres, based out of Austin, Texas. Been on the STEM committee for a few years now, and I've been doing a lot of outreach ever since I was in high school. So I'm excited to kind of share some tips and tricks later. Rebecca?
All right. Hi, I'm Rebecca Brown. I work for GPI out of Bedford, New Hampshire. I've actually only been involved in STEM since I had my daughter and got kind of roped into running an activity in her school. But it's something that I've really enjoyed doing ever since, and I'm also excited to share with you what I've done.
And I've been doing STEM outreach for about 20 years here at the University of Memphis and lead something called the West Tennessee STEM Hub here. So again, we're all very passionate about this and really looking forward to working with you guys today. You're going to get to meet several other members of our committee later on when we go into breakout sessions, as we've got quite a few people who are here with us today in order to be able to moderate the various breakouts. So with that, I'm going to just quickly walk you through the agenda. So in a few minutes, we're going to launch a poll to sort of get our conversation started and understand a little bit more about everybody that has joined us today. And then we will talk a bit about our committee and what we're doing and the kinds of resources that we have developed. We'll discuss the importance of STEM outreach and some of the types of outreach that you can be involved in. And then a lot of what we'll focus on is really practical tips to help you get started, things to consider to make sure that your outreach goes well. And then Rebecca's going to be leading a really great activity to give you some hands-on experience with some of the resources that we have created through our STEM committee. So we'll wrap things up with some more information on how you can get started and some additional materials that we have developed to help you with that. And then we'll open it up for Q&A. So be thinking about questions that you may have as we go through the webinar today. And you're welcome to post those in the chat at any time. But we will give you the opportunity to unmute and actually ask in person if you would like. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this, and I'm going to switch over to our Slido so that we can go ahead and get started with our poll questions. So let me
Pull out your phones. They're going to have a QR code. And I think, are we also dropping it in the chat? I can't remember, but definitely a QR code. So I'm going to have my phone ready too.
all right, share again. Okay, so here we go. You'll see on the left-hand side of the screen the QR code, and at the bottom is the website and the code that you can use to join and be able to participate. So this first question is just, have you participated in STEM events in the past? Looks like a good number of people here have actually done some of this before. So we'll be looking forward also in the breakout discussion to hearing some of your experiences as well. Looks like things have settled down, so we'll go on to our next question. So now we're interested in knowing what age group of students you've worked with.
Probably pick your most frequent if you've done a few of those, but what do you most frequently work with?
Looks like elementary is leading the pack here.
Start them young.
It's exciting to see some people that have been doing this with pre-K too. That's great.
Yeah.
All right, we will move on to the next question. So here, we really just want to know what's the first word that comes to mind when you think about STEM? Fun, love that. Engineering. These are great responses. Interactive problem solving, importance for the future generation. These look great. All right, and then I think we'll move on to the last question. So what are some of your limitations in being involved in STEM outreach? If there's anything that kind of holds you back from doing more, what is it? Time definitely is a big one, I think, for a lot of people. Getting into classrooms, not sure what to present.
Ooh, employer support. That's a big
Yeah,
one.
that's a big one. And we're going to be touching on some ways to help you with several of these limitations. So, and hopefully, even with the time, a lot of the resources we've created will help take away some of the time required for you to prepare for this, which is really, in a lot of cases, way more than actually doing it. So, hopefully, this will be helpful in allowing you to do more. All right. So, we'll go ahead and close out of the poll now. And go back to our slides. All right. So again, we're really glad that all of you took the time to join us today. We spend a lot of time thinking about STEM outreach and how we can better support ITE members in being able to do more of this with lots of different pre-K-12 audiences. So the work that we do is really focused on generating awareness and excitement in pre-K-12 students about career choices in transportation, and really helping them to understand that STEM is a huge part of the industry. A lot of times, students that we work with may not even make the connection between STEM and transportation. So it's important for us to help do that, and then ultimately help build that pipeline of future transportation professionals. So in thinking about why we do this, I think probably anybody on here that is a transportation professional knows how difficult it can be to find talent. If you're one of the student chapter members, you guys have probably also started noticing that there are lots of jobs available and open to you. Definitely there is a demand for professionals who are interested in transportation careers. So we really want to help bring more people into the pipeline and help make sure they're aware of these opportunities. So we want to ensure that, again, that we're making those connections between STEM and transportation and helping them see the variety of opportunities and hopefully something that will be a good fit for them. And ultimately, we're trying to inspire the next generation so that they are following in all of our footsteps. If you look at this graphic that's on the slide, you'll see some of the predictions in terms of employment change over the next 10 years. And for non-STEM occupations and all occupations, it's down around 3%. But for STEM occupations, the growth expected is more than double that. So really important to be thinking about how we make an impact in trying to help fill that pipeline and prepare more people to choose transportation careers. So some of the types of STEM outreach that you might be engaged in, it really depends on what you're interested in and what you're able to do. So in terms of the format and the audience, you can do in person or virtual. It might be that you do something that's a one-time event, or it may be something where you build a relationship and this is a repeated activity where you're going out to the same classroom or to the same after-school club to be able to build that relationship and help them see over a longer period of time some of the exciting things that can be available to them through transportation careers. These can be formal activities in classrooms. They can also be informal, again, after school clubs, scouts, other kinds of organizations for youth. And then, of course, pre-K all the way through high school, there's lots of opportunity to be able to engage with STEM outreach. Some of the types of things that you might do, lead hands-on STEM activities. You may participate in career days and share a bit about your career path and how you ended up where you are today, what you love about your job, those sorts of things. You might organize an outreach event yourself, or you might participate in somebody else's. And you could end up speaking in a K-12 webinar like this. So there's lots of different things that you can do. So it may even be that you want to help with outreach to other professionals to help encourage them to get more involved. So
Yeah, so just we'll run through a few things. So I'm going to cover some of the in-between meat. And so we're going to talk about high quality content. How can we do it? What is it? What does that mean? Then we are going to talk about the helpful resources through our IT website, through the STEM committee website. And then kind of some tips and tricks that we'll go through as well that some of us have learned and want to be able to share those. So we can go to the next one. Cool. So high quality content. Audience engagement is one of the biggest things and kind of what we did with you guys here. What's one of the easy, let's ask poll question. Who's in the room? If you've done leadership IT or who's here, like that whole comment. So really understanding what also different capabilities are in the room and sometimes that you can gauge just from doing poll questions or actually throughout the full session. Are you doing like a hands-on activity? Is it a presentation? Especially if you're doing presenting content, it's much harder to try and get people integrated. So we have a couple other ways that Rebecca's going to share as well, but polling is definitely easy. Asking them questions to the room, very simple things, or raise your hand if you walked here to work. I mean, well, to work, to school, to class, whatever. If you biked, if you drove, or someone dropped you off, asking those little things of how people got from one place to another is very easy to do, and they're immediately engaged. The other side of it is real world application. So one thing that we've done with our section, capital area section in Texas, and you can see a couple of pictures, is we've had the opportunity to bring in some of the actual cones and barrels and parts of traffic control to our actual activities, which has made it a lot of fun. If you don't necessarily have that capability, you can show pictures of where transportation is involved in the real world. You can do a little video if you can include that in a presentation. So really showing not just words, but showing pictures and how I think I was in an Uber one day and they asked, well, what do you do? And I was like, oh, you see the signs? You see the markings? I do those. I design those. And they're like, I had no idea who did that. And I was like, I didn't either until I started doing it. So kind of finding those little ways to add what you do in your everyday and showing people outside of STEM how that integrates with all the different work that we do inside of STEM. So then big part, testing activities. And we'll talk about that a little bit with tips and tricks. Work out all the kinks early if you can. It makes life a lot easier and a lot smoother and a lot less stressful. Because there's always going to be something in the middle of the day that goes awry when you're doing an activity of some sort. So testing that and kind of working out all those kinks early is really, really helpful. And then, like we said, STEM for all, really considering if you are in a classroom, making sure with the teachers, if possible, do they have all capabilities in the room and making sure you can accommodate and everyone with different capabilities can participate, as well as making sure your activities are geared towards not one gender or another, but really making it open for everybody is really important as well. Next slide. So we got a little walkthrough video here, but we just redid our STEM committee website. So it's kind of showing the different things that we have available. We have resources for transportation professionals. It's actually going to take you to a list of how to get started flyers that we have, all the different webinars. This webinar will be uploaded there. Then we'll also have activities by different grade levels broken out at the bottom. And you'll see at the top, you can jump all the way down to the different activities based on what grade level. And then we have transportation careers. We're working on this one. There's a bunch of videos in there, as well as we're trying to get some testimonials of what you do within your transportation career. And then just some general resources that may not be ITE only, but also different web pages we found that can be really useful, that you can also look at ways to volunteer, who to integrate with, that kind of thing. So cool. Next one. And then tips and tricks. I think the big things that we talked about are time, right? That we saw in that word cloud. Budget's also another one. When it comes to budget, you can spend no money, you can spend a lot of money, you can ask for volunteers, you can ask for someone to sponsor if necessary. I know we've been able to sometimes find sponsors that will, or different sections have been able to find sponsors that will 3D print some fun things to bring to a STEM activity. Yeah, if you got that plug, use it. But you don't have to. You can also find ways, just to you showing up is huge in itself. If you're having a longer day, maybe a few hours, make sure there's some breaks, some snackies. Rebecca's going to show you some tips on breaks in a little while. Easiest way to also do STEM outreach is partnerships. If you see a section, if you see another local organization that's already doing a ton of STEM stuff, just ask, hey, can our group of our section volunteers come with you guys and work with you? And then you can kind of learn with them. It's just an easy way to get in. And like we said, testing, a pre-session with all the volunteers. So actually at one of the IT annual meetings, you see that picture there on the right, actually as we tested out one of our activities that works really well in person, all the different surfaces and running different cars over grass versus sandpaper versus down like a straight cardboard, and what that activity could look like. And so we were kind of train the trainer and testing it ourselves before we ever kind of like released it into the world. And the last biggest thing is be flexible. I know I'm a very rigid person and I like my schedule and I want things to go this way and that way. Yeah, that never works in STEM. You hope for the best, but kind of being able to be a little loosey-goosey and flexible with it is really helpful, and will make everyone just have a more enjoyable experience. So I'll hand it over to Rebecca.
All right. Thank you, Anna Maria. Yeah, definitely that activity that you showed just a minute ago with the ramps and friction, that was a perfect example of the need to be flexible, because we fully planned on all those materials you saw in that picture being on the ramp itself. But then when we got to the room, we found out it was carpet and the cars would not move on the carpet. So we had to actually put those materials on the floor to make the floor more slippery instead, as we were trying to reduce the amount of friction instead of create it. But I'm going to walk you through some examples of some different activities that you can run, and then we're actually going to do an activity so that you can get some hands-on experience for how you can even run things virtually. So I'll walk you through a couple of in-person ones that we have done in the past that are both that are very adaptable to kids as young as preschool, all the way up to adults can do these activities and have a blast with them. And then we'll move into our virtual one. Next slide. So this first one is a land, air, and sea activity, and this is actually one that the STEM committee developed themselves. And this is one that you can do in a variety of different ways, starting with, very, very young children to help them understand the difference in the ways that people travel, either by land, air, and sea. You can see in the middle picture here that kids have a bunch of different bins that are made up of different materials, with the cotton balls meant to represent clouds in the sky, and the sand meant to represent the earth for land. And then there are sort of like crystal plastic beads that are meant to be like waves in the water. and the kids have a bucket filled with different types of transportation that they just sort into all of these different bins, and it gives them the opportunity to use their, sensory skills and divide out the different ones and really play with the materials. You can do any wide variety of materials that you want to do. But one lesson I learned is that water beads are not a good one to do after we sent water beads flying all around a preschool classroom. They bounce and they roll very, very far, and the class will be cleaning them up for the rest of the year. So it's something you definitely don't want to do. Um, if you're just at a booth, for example, at a fair or something like that, one thing that you could do, we took the same activity and we adapted it. The image that you see all the way on your right-hand side has water on it. It has train tracks on it. It has bike lanes. It has pretty much everything that you would need to travel. And it's got everything divided by air, land, and water. And we got magnets and put this image up over a whiteboard, since that was also magnetic. And the kids just stuck the magnets of the different transportation vehicles on there. And we, were able to talk with them about it and talk with their parents about the different ways that people get around, and learn a little bit about transportation. The activity that you see all the way over on the left-hand side, that is a great activity for breaks. So as you're transitioning from one activity to another, you can actually use transportation-based yoga to have kids get up and stretch and pretend they're different transportation vehicles. And this is also a great one that works for adults as well. So if you want to go to the next slide. So here, at our sort of STEM 101 workshop a couple of years ago, we had everybody get up during the breaks and they all did their own transportation yoga. And this site that's listed here, called YoReMiKids.com, they have over an hour of different videos that are all transportation-based yoga. So if you're not comfortable running the activity yourself, then you can certainly play a video and have everyone get up. Maybe your singing voice isn't as good as some of the people running it in the videos, but it's a great way to bring a video along, have people get up, move around during the breaks, and they get to make a fool of themselves, be silly for a little bit. And some of them are based on songs that kids would know, like Row, Row, Row Your Boat, and like The Little Engine That Could, and things like that. So it's a great opportunity to get movement into your activities. So if you want to go to the next one. So the next example is the ramps and friction one that you saw previously. So this is a great one for as kids as young as preschool, all the way up through high school. It gives them the opportunity to use materials that are in their classroom and really just play and explore with the different materials. So it's as simple as just setting up ramps, and you can just, if you don't have a lot of different materials to work with, you can just work with the angle of the ramp itself to talk about how does that impact how fast a vehicle goes down the ramp. You can work with different types of vehicles to talk about, is a heavier vehicle going to move down the ramp faster, or is it going to move slower? You can incorporate a lot of the materials that are in their classroom. You can also bring along a lot of other materials. So you can see in the image down in the lower left-hand side where they use some sandpaper, some bubble wrap, things like that, and attach them to their cardboard ramps, to be able to slide the vehicles down and see which ones held and which ones, move the vehicle down the surface. So there's all different ways that you can run this activity in a classroom setting. And the great thing about it is that if you incorporate materials from their classroom, this is something that they can do again and again. So they can, really continue the learning with this activity. If you want to go to the next slide. And so here's an example where we took that same ramps and friction activity that we did with preschoolers, and we ran this with the leadership ITE class. And in this case, we made it more of a challenge, and we played around with different challenges. For example, you can have them work with the height of the ramp, or the materials on the ramp, to have a car stop at a specific location. So this is one way that you can make it sort of a challenge or a competition between different teams and have people working together. Each one can be assigned a different activity. For example, one person can be releasing the car, another person catching it at the end. You can have another person timing how fast the car is going. So how long does it take for the car to reach the line at the other end? And then how can you slow it down so that it still reaches that same point, but it's doing so slower. So there's lots of different ways that you can adapt this activity. Next slide. So another activity that you can run, and this one is also available on our website. This one is called Traveling Around Town, and it works great in person, but there's also the opportunity to do this one virtually, and that's what we're going to do right now. So essentially, what this activity does is it's really about learning about the different ways that people can get around a town and learning different transportation needs for different users. And in this activity, you will be given a map similar to the one that you see up on the screen now, that has a variety of different neighborhoods and different resources, like places of employment, grocery stores, things like that located on the map. Your job, you will be given a few different challenges that you need to solve or problems that you need to solve for this fictional town. And you will select one or two of those problems. You will be given a budget to work with and a list of different tools that you can use to solve those problems. So if you want to go to the next slide. So essentially, this is the instructions for what you'll be doing. So as I mentioned, you will have the list on the right-hand side of the different problems that you can solve for the community. For example, kids being or parents being worried about kids in the neighborhood having trouble walking and biking safely to school. That's a very common problem for schools right now. That's one example of something that you may be able to solve. Another one is a neighborhood that wants a more direct driving route to get to their grocery store and their local school. Also people being wanting to be able to walk to their local parks. So you will be given these problems. Select one or two. I suggest that given the amount of time that we have for this activity, that you suggest just or that you select just one. If you want to go to the next slide, Stephanie. There we go. So this is just the same problems repeated on the left-hand side, but you'll have this toolbox that you can work with. So for example, if you wanted to build a new road, that would cost you $3 per 300 feet of new roadway. If you wanted to add a new bus route, that would also cost you $3. Building a sidewalk would be $2. So you want to think about really what is the best way to solve the problem that you have within the budget that you have. So every group will be given $20 to work with. In just a couple of moments, we will be breaking out into breakout rooms. And you will work with the team that you have within that breakout room to select which problem you're going to solve and how you're going to do it based on your budgeted $20 that you will have to solve that issue. You will have about 15 minutes to work with your group to develop your solution. There will be a whiteboard up that will have all of your instructions on it. It will also have the map and it will have the list of your different toolbox items and the cost associated with it. So you don't need to remember all of these. You don't need to jot those down or anything like that. Those will be available to you on the screen the entire time. And one of our moderators will be jumping into each of the breakout rooms. So if there are any questions or anything, you can feel free to ask the moderators. They will help with getting the whiteboard set up. When there is about 1 minute left in the activity, you will be given a notice to let you know that there is a minute left. And we just ask that at that point in time, you save or you export your whiteboard so that we can, when we come back to the full team, we can talk a little bit about which problem you solved, why you chose that problem, why you thought that one was important, and what solutions you used to solve that problem, and how much of your budget did you spend to do that. And then we'll talk a little bit about other things too, like the difficulties you found in doing the activity. Um, did you wish you had a bigger budget? Were you able to do the things you wanted with your budget? Things like that when we reconvene. All right, welcome back, everyone. Oh, it looks like we're still getting a few more jumping back, so I'll give it just a second. But hopefully everyone enjoyed the activity and you were able to solve some very important transportation problems for Tinseltown while you were in your breakout groups. What we'd like to do is talk a little bit about the activity. Just have one member from each team kind of talk about what was the problem that you solved and how did you solve that problem. And then we'd like to hear a little bit of feedback from you on kind of what you thought about the activity. Were there any issues that you had with running it? And any ways you saw that you could potentially use this activity in the future, or how you think it might be able to be adapted. So we'll start with room one. Would you like to tell us about what your problem was? So I think Stephanie, that was your room, correct? So if you have someone from your room,
Yes, Heather is going to unmute and share.
perfect.
Hi. So here's our map. We decided to pick problems number 1 and 2. So getting neighborhood 1 and 2 to the school and neighborhood 1 to the grocery store, which is all on the far side of town. So we first took a look at what were the more of the quick wins in terms of the sidewalk. So we made a connection in this area between the two neighborhoods and then a connection across. And that cost us about $6. And then the bigger cost was associated with getting neighborhood 1 to the other side of town, which is putting in a new bus route. So we connected the existing one all the way over there and then added stops. At that point, we realized we did some sidewalk and bike lane connections here as well. Then we realized we ran out of money. I guess some of the problems we didn't know is there's no symbol on here for a crosswalk. Wasn't quite sure where they would be needed because we couldn't see any example of them. We found that some of the other problems were too expensive to solve. We felt that this one gave more access to more people than one particular smaller neighborhood. Is there any other questions that I didn't answer?
Nope, I think that was perfect. Thank you, Heather.
Thanks.
All right, so let's go to group 2 and see which problem you solved. So Anna Maria, that was your group.
Yes, took me a second, but I think I finally found where I downloaded it. But yeah, it was with Jessica, Mark, Lakshman, and Caesar. So what do y'all want to share? We did have a little bit of make your own adventure, and so we made our own crosswalk symbol since we couldn't figure it out. I will say that was kind of how I approached, because I did this activity too. That was how I approached it. Was like, well, do we have to? What does this mean? And I'm like, we get to decide what we want to do. Does it mean that? Does it not mean that? So we went with number 1, but I'd love to have someone else chime in.
I can talk a little bit. Yeah, we went with number 1 to try to get the kids from neighborhood 1 and 2 to the school. And so we kind of looked at what was already existing and we tied in. The first step was looking at the bike lane that we had there on that south street. And we extended that over to connect to neighborhood 2. And then later, I guess we ran that up as well to 1. Similarly, we connected the sidewalk between neighborhood 2 and neighborhood 1, added the crosswalks there across that western street. And I don't think it really showed up, but we built a path
Right here.
right there where that crosswalk is to connect. Yeah. So that path could allow for both bikes and walking into neighborhood 4 to be able to get across that other crosswalk to the school. And then for those in neighborhood 1 that wanted a kind of a more direct path, we extended a sidewalk and a couple crosswalks there to connect from 1 to 3 to have them come down to the school. So even though the problem was really how do we get kids from 1 and 2 to the school, we also really addressed it for neighborhood 3 as well. And we think if we did the math right, that we spent $20 without having to leave anything out.
It
Excellent.
was tight. It was tight.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
tight. It's the budget I'm
Thank
used to
you.
working with, though.
Yeah, we all definitely agreed that a bike lane and a crosswalk and a sidewalk do not cost the same amount of money in real life. Or
Yeah.
no, I'm sorry, a bike lane and a crosswalk don't cost the same, and a trail and a sidewalk might not cost the same in real life. But that was the fun of it. Make your own adventure.
Yep. So yeah, one thing that could be changed then is making the pricing more related to real life and how they relate to each other. So, great. We only have a couple more minutes before we need to move to the next topic. But does group 3 want to tell us what they did for their?
So
Beverly,
Sheeta,
that was you,
I
right?
think, yeah,
Were
that
we
was
group
mine.
3? Okay.
Go ahead, Sheeta. Yeah, she
I couldn't
kind of
remember.
downloaded it. I don't think I did, but
Yes, I took a very poor screenshot. Okay. Can you guys see? What are you all seeing? Oh goodness.
Yeah, we got it.
Okay. Like I have so many things open. Okay, so we decided to solve problem 2, which was to get neighborhoods 1 and 2 to the school, the grocery store, and different jobs. So we kind of chit-chatted a little bit much, so we didn't get through the whole budget, so there's definitely room to do more. But we decided initially with connecting the existing bus stop with a new bus route and adding a bus stop at neighborhood 2, one at neighborhood 4 to get the kids to the school and to get people to the 2 different work areas, and then another bus stop kind of in between the grocery store and the neighborhood 5, kind of extra bonus. We get to help neighborhood 4 and 5. And then we added a sidewalk on the north side here because there wasn't a sidewalk to connect these stops and the schools and work, and then added some sidewalks and bike lanes here through neighborhood 4 and a shared use path to be able to get the neighborhood 1 folks a like more direct route that doesn't require them to either use the bus or be on the road to get to school, which we only spent $12, so we still had a lot more money to be able to kind of, be able to connect neighborhood 2 the same way and maybe even connect the other neighborhoods to neighborhood 4. So yeah, this was fun.
Yeah. Sounds like you definitely solved a lot of issues and we're well on your way to solving all of them. So
Oh my
If
gosh,
only,
an
Just a little
angle.
more
easy
money.
as this. Yeah, exactly.
You did an angle so outside the box.
I know
And
they
then
were
I-
like someone was like, why are you making me compute the hypotenuse of this?
Hypotenuse. But then what the thing that also came up was the interesting thing of we were asking, okay, well, if there's only a sidewalk on one side, how are they going to get
Mhm.
across? So you got to put one on the other side, or you got a crosswalk. We didn't even address that, but that's a good kind of question that you could ask the kids, right?
Yeah.
right.
It doesn't show up here, but how do you get across the street? Where do we do that? And can, because they obviously walk in their own neighborhood. So I think that's good things to kind of pique their interest about how the logistics of all that, how you can expand it and get their kids to think.
Yeah.
Frogger it. Look what plays in Frogger.
Oh my gosh, girl.
Yes,
Well, that's what I
exactly.
used to do. Ride a bike without a helmet and shoes. So, it was the 80s. It was the 70s. What do I say?
I'm
Nope.
very happy to hear that group 3 thought multimodal. And really by solving some of the problems for neighborhood 2, You're also solving some for neighborhoods 4 and 5 because you're reducing down the amount of cut through traffic that they're experiencing. So I think that was, a great way that you can point out to kids too about these different things, talking to them about, how solving one problem can impact another neighborhood. So those are things to think about when you're sort of trying to go through and prioritize what improvements are the most important to be able to do. And thinking about how can you solve the most problems for the most people with the budget that you have. So thank you all for your participation. At this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Stephanie to talk a little bit about how you can get started in doing your own STEM activities.
All right, thanks. And it was really a lot of fun to get to see how the groups were interacting and some of the cool solutions that you came up with. So hopefully you can see how that would be a really fantastic way to use or activity to use with a variety of age groups. I mentioned in our session that I've actually used it with my undergraduates and they loved it. So in any case, so thinking about how to get started, probably the first place to begin is really thinking about what your goals are. And especially those of you who mentioned that employer support was one of the barriers that you might have related to doing more STEM outreach. So thinking about sort of that business case for why we need to do this may be a way to be able to get your organization on board and figuring out how you might align with some of your workforce development goals within your company may be helpful. So again, thinking about what your reason for wanting to do this or your organization's connections to it is really important when you get started because that's going to also help you make sure that you're able to devote the time that you need to doing this. The other thing too is thinking about, as you do your activity or your outreach event, what is it that you're trying to achieve in terms of the student learning? It may be in some cases that you simply want to make sure that they're aware of transportation careers. Or in other cases, it might be that you're trying to tie in specifically to a certain content area within a class, and you want to show how a particular, you know, um, you know, maybe some algebra applies within something that you might do within a transportation problem solution. So you could have lots of different kinds of goals. And so thinking about what it is that you're really trying to help students learn is important from the beginning. And then figuring out the format and the frequency and really the scale of what you want to do. So, is this going to be something where you're able to do this in person? Or are you going to have to do something virtually? And as you can see, there are plenty of things that you can do virtually where you can actually do hands-on activities. Certainly you can drop in as a virtual guest speaker. That's always something pretty easy to do within a classroom setting. But you can do hands-on activities, as you just saw, and really make them meaningful for students. And then in terms of the frequency, and this links back then to your why and your goals as well, is, are you trying to just do something that's a one-time event? You're just really trying to get your foot in the door and or get your toes in terms of trying to do some STEM outreach? Or is this something where you're really wanting to build a relationship and develop a connection with a particular school or a particular scout troop or some other organization? Is it something that you want to be a repeated activity? And so then you want to think a little bit more long term, what is it overall that I want to achieve over the course of however many meetings we're going to have? And then, finally thinking about what kind of scale. Is this something where I'm just talking to a couple of students? Is it more of like a mentoring thing? Or is it, I'm going to be working with a small group or a large group? And depending on that, the feasibility of what you're able to do also may change. So with your audience, again, it might be preschool, it might be all the way up to high school. There may be, we mentioned in one of the previous discussions, thinking about the capabilities of the students and is there anything that you need to be able to do to accommodate students that are going to be participating. So really knowing who it is that you're going to be speaking with or working with, and making sure that you're targeting the activities that you're doing appropriately so that everybody is able to engage. And then thinking about the partners. So this was another thing that some of you had mentioned as a barrier is not really knowing how to get connected. So if you're trying to get connected with a school, I mean, certainly if you have a child, volunteering at your child's school is a great way to get involved. But if you don't have that connection and you're trying to figure out how you can do this, one of the things to think about is that career and technical education is where transportation and STEM falls within middle and high school curriculum. So every district, public district in the country has career and technical education courses. And so reaching out to a CTE director or leader within a particular school or for a particular district is another really good way to get connected if you're interested in that age group. Um, Community organizations. So there are lots of organizations that serve youth, and it may be that you're able to just come in and work with the organization one afternoon a week, or maybe it's just once or twice during the programming that they're already presenting. We do this with a lot of different community organizations here, Boys and Girls Club or Streets Ministries. They all have after school programming for youth. And so depending on what their needs are, sometimes we go in and just do, a one-time event that's sort of a career exposure type of thing. And then in other cases, we're coming back once a week and really trying to build that relationship and helping to mentor some of those students into choosing STEM careers. And then professional organizations like ITE, of course, are a great way for you to get involved in partnering for various types of STEM outreach and activities. So definitely don't overlook that. And certainly reach out to your local sections and district to find out, if there's something that's already going on that you can get involved in. So then when you're planning your outreach, you've selected the type. We hope that you'll consider taking a look at the resources that we have developed through the ITE Pre-K-12 STEM Outreach Committee. So there's a QR code here on your screen that you can follow. It has all of the information that we've talked about today in a kind of a STEM 101 flyer that you can download. It's just a one-pager that will kind of help you get started. And then you'll also see the links that Anna Maria showed earlier to the various age groups that you could go in and look through materials and resources that are available. Or if you want to look at the resources as a whole, or if you're interested in the more of the career-focused videos and things like that. So there's lots of different things available on our website that are there to support the work that you're doing. And I will also mention, if there are ever things that you wish that we did have on there that we don't, please reach out to our committee and let us know, because we're always willing to take a look at suggestions and figure out if it's something that we might be able to do during our next year, putting it into our work plan. So certainly let us know if there are things that are missing that you'd love to see. And so then, once you've decided what it is you're going to do, mapping out those details and logistics, the planning is really important to make sure that the activity or the event runs smoothly. So you want to kind of think through some of the things that could go wrong, how you might be able to address it, and just really understand what it is that you're going to be doing within the time constraints that you'll have with the students. Once you perform the outreach, then you definitely want to make sure that you're celebrating the success and encouraging others. So again, it doesn't have to be something huge. It doesn't have to be something that you create from scratch. There are plenty of resources available that you can just pick something up, read through it, figure out what it is that you'll need to be able to go in and do that activity successfully, and then build those partnerships so that you're able to make the connections with students and reach the age group that you're interested in working with. So with that, I'm going to turn things back over to Rebecca. So be thinking about questions you want to ask.
All right. Yeah, thank you all so much for participating. So we have about 15 minutes left. So we'd like to give everybody an opportunity to ask some questions. If you don't feel comfortable asking yourself, you're welcome to type it into the chat and I can read off the questions. Or you are welcome to use the raise hand feature and we will call on you. You can unmute yourself if you want to turn off your camera or turn on your camera, I should say, to ask your questions. And we're happy to answer anything that you may have.
Uh, I just want to ask one thing. Like, do you guys expected any crazy kind of question from any student from school when you've been there? Like, you didn't expect
Yes.
that question at all.
Yes. I will say I had a student look at me one time. We were doing an activity with our section. I think that was the one that the A&M students came out to. So I don't know if you were there too, but one of the kids looked at me and he goes, "How much you make?" I wasn't ready. And of course, I'm not gonna say numbers because I think he was like 9 and couldn't necessarily even comprehend. And so I kind of said like enough to live by myself in Austin. And he was like, "Oh, you make $1,000 a week." And I was like, "Oh, that's so sweet that you think that that's enough to live by yourself in Austin." Um, but I was like a little bit more, and he goes 2,000. So like it was so funny how he was like excited about that. And then after we kind of talked about it a little bit in terms of like, oh, I went to school and kind of like added a little bit more to it, then, at the end of it all, I guess they all thought I made millions, which is not the case. But I said, we do this for the people and, got us through. But that's happened before.
Like I'm wondering if any of the students might ask you why that stop sign is in octagon shape, not rectangle, not triangle, like that.
Because the METCD says so.
Did any student ask like that?
I haven't gotten those questions. Anyone on the call gotten some crazy?
We've done some events with fourth graders where at least the very first year where we were explaining like a roundabout and we had a whole like activity where they would go through a roundabout as different modes of transportation. And before that, we had kind of talked about different types of streets and intersections and what that looks like and who designs these roads. And then we had like a discussion thing at the end after the activity. And one of the questions they asked us kind of revealed like how much more they knew than we assumed they might know or like that they could understand. And one of the questions they asked was like straight up something about like signal timing. And I was like, dude, you're 9. Like, why are you like, how are you asking about this? Like, how do you understand the patterns so well that you understand that there is technology out there nowadays that can help the signals literally time and coordinate? And so like having them ask that question sort of helped us realize that like they could understand concepts that were maybe more complex than we gave them credit for. So kind of along those lines, like it surprised us, but then it kind of helped us for the next year be like, okay, well, apparently fourth graders understand signal coordination and timing. So, we can start the lesson off there.
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of preschool age and kindergarten students, so I feel like with them there's no question that's off the table. A lot of them have absolutely nothing to do with what I'm trying to teach, but you definitely do get a lot of interesting questions and stuff. And some you can answer, some you can't, some you just kind of move on. But yeah, there's a lot of questions out there that people ask.
That's back to that be flexible part, right? You're just like, oh,
Absolutely.
avoid that one.
Yep. Any
Thanks
other
for sharing.
questions?
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will say, I don't think Michael's on anymore, but he had in the chat, he, actively works with middle school right now, but wants to start in high school and kind of the different levels of maturity and skills that can sometimes change when you jump from middle school to high school level. Anyone on the call have any experience, like maybe like 1 or 2 little tips or things that are different that y'all have seen with high schoolers? I've done a lot of presentations to college students, but I don't know that I've hit high schoolers.
I think one of the things with the high schoolers is a little bit different is, you depending on what grade level you're in high school, you have a mixture now of folks that are always passengers and then those that are young drivers. And so their perspectives definitely change as they get older and they get behind the wheel. And then some of what you're presenting is almost like an extension of driver's ed at that point, versus some of the. It's interesting because the previous comment there about the kid understanding signal timing and things like that. I mean, because your perspective is actually different. I think when you're just sitting there observing and watching, you can take a lot of that in versus, when you're driving, you have to pay more attention to kind of like what's in front of you and making other decisions. So I think all those things factor into some of the questions and that they're going to ask and the material that you're going to present.
Yeah, good point. Thanks, Mark.
I think this is not quite related to this specific question, but Mark kind of like made it pop into my head, is that it is important to kind of understand what the experiences are of the people that you're going to be working with. Because like, for example, some of the activities that I've run in kindergarten programs, some of the kids, particularly in some of like the wealthier communities or private schools, have a much better understanding of some of the concepts than when you may go into a lower income school or like a Head Start program or something like that, where they have a lot of difficulty in understanding it. And there could potentially be some language barriers there too, where many of them are coming from households where English isn't necessarily spoken as their first language. So it's important to think about those types of things when you're going into, different situations, different schools, things like that. Thinking about who you're going to be teaching and what their own experience might be so that you can come up with an activity and a topic and everything that they can understand based on their real life experiences.
Yeah, the same attitude works with adults. They don't always understand in their perspective. I know we've worked a lot with Mark, and I don't know, in other towns, but in San Antonio, people don't always understand what they need to be doing when they're in the traffic. So kids, we teach them early, and actually the kids have better concepts than some of the adults do.
Yep. Great. Any other questions or anything from anyone in the group?
I have a quick question about trying to establish that trust between you and community members. So one of the hard things that we have found on our student outreach committee at capital area section is that sometimes there's a lot of work that you have to do at the front end in order to get even someone to answer your email. Like personally, I emailed all the elementary schools in the Austin ISD system and only literally one replied. But you know what? We've established that relationship. We're doing something. And so how do you find ways to get meaningful connections, especially with like those pre-K ages and then high schools? We have found high schools to be kind of hard to get a hold of.
Yeah, at the preschool age, I will say that the Head Start programs are a great place to start, because they get a lot of their funding by bringing in people. And so they are always willing to have people come in and help them out, and it gives their teachers sometimes a break depending on the activity that you're doing. So that is a great organization to work with. In terms of like elementary schools, I personally have found it very difficult as well to get into any elementary schools unless I knew a student. But on kind of the flip side of that, some of like the charter schools and Montessori schools are very open to having people come in. So those are ones that you may want to reach out to if you're having difficulty getting in with some of the public schools, because a lot of them do already have their own curriculum. They require you to go through the Corey forms. They're a little suspicious of outsiders reaching out. So thinking about those other types of programs that you can work with. But after school programs at the elementary school level can be a great place to start, like Girls Inc., Boys and Girls Club, YMCA's. Those can be great places to reach out to. They're always looking for different programming that they can bring in to, add value to their programs as well. I see Beverly, you have your hand up. I wasn't sure if you wanted to add some information on that question.
Yeah, actually, you just kind of took it away. Stole my thunder.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I mean, I did it when my kids were in scouting, and that was just kind of part and parcel about the activities, because every age group they they have STEM related things. But our after school program in College Station the on-site after school program is run by the school district. It used to be the city, but a lot of those that I agree with Rebecca in that they're always looking for things. They would do a career fair every year, and the parents would come and talk about their jobs, and that it was just like a career fair at college, right? And the kids are going from table to table, and you've got to, and we have most of us work for the university. And the summer school, after, like, they have a summer day camp program that's also run by the school district, and they're always looking for help and ideas. And the all the counselors, then I realize this is a luxury, but all the counselors in College Station are university students. So a lot of them have STEM related fields, or they're in psychology, elementary education. So they're always really looking for opportunities. And that was the easiest ones for us, I would say. And our daycare did it too, because it was associated with the university, and they always like the parents to come in and talk about stuff. So, but you probably
Yeah,
know somebody whose kid is in a daycare that's looking for, career opportunities if they're 4.
Not
yeah,
just
and I think
sorry. I was just going to reemphasize for the high school level, definitely connect with those career and technical education leaders, because they're looking for that, because that's how they get basically judged in terms of the efficacy of their programs. They have to build those partnerships. So that's a really good place to start for high school.
and it kind of ties into Hunter's question in the chat. He's asking, I want to connect to the school. Who's the best point of contact? I will say, if you don't already have like an in at an ISD, or even at like at school or after school program directly, there's usually a contact email or phone call. And cold call or cold email, as awkward as that can be sometimes. But I think if you just lay out like, hey, I'm with this organization, or I'm with this group, I work here, I do this, we'd love to come in and do STEM outreach. Do you have a point of contact that coordinates? Because some of those schools do have a very specific point of contact for that outreach. It's just trying to get to the right person. You might have to play a little hopping around. But sometimes that's the easiest way to do it. But it can be kind of the most difficult sometimes because it's a little nerve-wracking.
And kind of to follow on that, if they have a dedicated CTE program, um, both of the school districts here have that. And I think what's interesting about reaching out to those programs, while a lot of it is, it's a lot of those students aren't necessarily going to go into college, but they may go into a trade school. And I mean, all the workforce development challenges that we're facing in transportation, a lot of them are, signal technicians, people who are out there working for TxDOT, working for the consultants, doing all kinds of things. So don't overlook the CTE programs that may or may not have college path students, because I think they get overlooked, and we're working with that right now, trying to figure out how do we deal with all those workforce development issues. Eric Rinsel just interviewed a whole bunch of his people in Orlando asking about that, and we're looking at those kinds of careers. So those, as Stephanie said, they're targeted. They are specific for CTE programs for students that are interested in going to technical fields. So
Yeah,
that's
because
another opportunity.
transportation is not just your engineers and not just your
That's
planners.
right.
You can talk
That's
about
right.
everyone in between, and that can sometimes help broaden that gap.
Yeah, I would just say, following up with what you said, Ms. Kuhn, we've had a lot of luck with the vocational schools, reaching out to them, trade schools, things like that. It's more senior level high schoolers, but we have had good luck reaching out to vocational schools.
And one of the people in the chat asked a question about whether the experience that people have had has been individually through their employer, through ITE, or through other organizations. I personally have done it individually through my employer and through ITE. I've kind of been in 3 different modes. I don't know if other people along the same line of what we're talking about have had an easier time approaching someone if they're coming from an organization or their employer. But that might be another way in if you're coming from a larger organization than just reaching out as yourself. Any other last minute questions? We're 1 minute over, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time here. But if there's any last questions or anything, feel free to drop them into the chat, or you can also email us and we can respond to those questions for you as well. I want to thank everybody here for your time. Anna Maria and Stephanie, I didn't know if you have anything you wanted to close with.
The only thing is just to note that in the chat there is a link for the PDH for today. If you are interested, it's $20 for members or non-members, and you can click through that link to access the PDH.
Yeah. And keep in mind, in some states, if you're looking for those PDHs, they do count STEM outreach. I know they do it in Texas. You can count a certain number of hours of STEM outreach as a PDH, which is great. So keep that in mind too. Another way to lure in volunteers if you start to organize groups as well. So yeah, thank you all guys for coming.
Thank you all.